The topic of this video is abstract deconstruction. In this video, I'm going to talk about the actual frame that we're going to be using for abstracts in this course. We've looked at several levels. Now we're going to the deepest level, and you'll see that abstract, this frame provides you with tools for seeing information. I'm going to be dealing with a number of abstracts from some of the greatest of all time, and I'm going to be taking them apart in terms of this frame. And you'll see why they're interesting, because an abstract needs to do a certain amount of work. You get a sense of how it does this and why. So an abstract needs to hook you. Okay, we're going to deconstruct it. We're going to take apart the sentences. We're going to look at what they're doing, how they relate to the funnel. An abstract provides you with the most salient or most important points of a paper. It needs to be extremely well organized, precise, and engaging. It needs to hook you. It needs to make you feel like you want a little bit more. Because if your abstract doesn't hook people, they're going to walk away. If you've got millions of articles literally to choose from, your abstract doesn't hook them, they'll walk away. So an abstract really needs to do a very important job as part of a paper. So what function does it perform? Well, it needs to give you an overview of the research. It needs to be written in the same order as the publication. It gives you a roadmap so somebody looking at the abstract can work out what bits of the paper they don't want to read. Nobody has time to read everything, so you need to make choices. The abstract should give you a roadmap, so if you see a place that you like on that map, you can just go there straight away. If you're interested in the whole thing, you can read that. Now, typical length is between 250 to 500 words, and it depends on the venue that you're publishing in, and each venue will have different rules. So let's look at some of the things that we include and some of the things that we leave out in the abstract frame. Now, there are exceptions to every rule. So this abstract frame is going to cover you in many situations, but you're always going to find some papers that don't necessarily fit this frame, but they fit it pretty well. And in my experience, I've used this throughout my career. They fit abstracts pretty well in the engineering field. Okay, so what do we include in this frame? The topic. What is the problem? What are we actually solving? What is the so what? The purpose. It tells us what we're doing. What is the problem? What is the purpose? Why are we doing this? Why is this problem important? The methodology, the how. What steps do we take? Why do we do this one before the other one? Maybe. You've got to remember you've got the absolute barest amount of detail that you can put in here. So abstract writing is actually quite hard, particularly for beginners. And most beginners will write the abstract last. It's the first thing in the paper that follows the title. Most people will write it last when they're beginning because it's one of the most difficult things to write because the information needs to be so sharp. It has your key findings and it also has your contributions. What do those key findings actually mean? How do they influence the world? Now, things that you'll see sometimes in the frame is the importance of the work. You don't always see the importance of the work because people who are working in a particular field will know why the work's important. So if you jump into a field, generally speaking, they won't tell you specifically why something's important because it's common knowledge. And the reason they won't tell you is because abstracts need to be very short. And why talk about something that's common knowledge? And that's what expertise is about. Being able to have conversations where you can add value by what is being said, but there's a common understanding of what isn't said. So there's a lot of efficiencies in conversations. Sometimes there'll be a reference to prior key research. Again, space will decide whether that goes in sometimes. And also the gap. Like I said, finding the gap is very important. The point of departure. What has been done? How is ours different? Why is ours distinctive? So this is the core of the abstract frame that we'll be using in this course. Some typical things are also left out of abstracts. You don't see these things very often, but you do see these things. Generally speaking, you don't see references in an abstract, symbols, definitions, acronyms, and abbreviations. Well, that is true to some extent, more or less true depending on the field. Some fields do things differently than others, very differently from others. But you also need to appreciate that looking down the lens of engineering abstracts, you're getting a specific view of the world, which is why I've chosen some abstracts outside engineering with respect to the all-stars so that you can see how others do it. Because engineers take ideas from anywhere. You take ideas from physics, you need to understand physics abstracts, chemistry. You're taking those fundamental building blocks and making use of them in your work. But you also need to appreciate if you're going to write a publication in these fundamental journals, which you might, that you need to also understand the way they're communicating as well. So these are the things we're excluding for the purposes of this course. An abstract is also important, as I've previously mentioned, because the indexing of it will go into a computer system. You need to take time choosing your words very carefully, because somebody's just going to search, do a topic search, do an idea search in Google or Scopus or Web of Science. They're going to be looking for something related to their idea. So if you choose the wrong words, your work is going to be ignored. Something may be published that should have referenced your work, but if you're not using the common language and you're not familiar enough with the language of your field, then your abstract won't reflect that. You won't be able to help researchers find your work. Consequently, you won't be cited, and then your H-index will suffer as a result. So it's in your interests to really make sure that you're using keywords that speak to the field. Okay, you've got to be smart about that. Now, when should you write an abstract? Well, a draft abstract helps focus. So when you're developing an engineering product system, you can develop an abstract to some extent. You can talk about some high-level things at the high end of the funnel. You can talk about the what. You can talk about the significance. You can talk about the applications. You can talk about the requirements. You can talk about the need. You can talk about the practical context. There's quite a few things that you can actually pack into an abstract. You may have some ideas about the methods, or you might have the method mapped out completely in your head if you're seasoned. But the only thing you won't be able to write about is the evaluation section, the results, if you haven't done any work. So you can actually write quite a lot of the abstract before you start, and that'll really help you focus. Okay? Most beginners write the abstract at the end because it's just too hard to think that way, to look ahead. They'll start with the method, how we did it, how we built it, what it looked like, what the power consumption was, what the materials were, what the process was, what steps did we follow. They then look at the results. They generate some graphs. They then look at the conclusions, and they then start to look at, well, I need to refer to the field. So they dive into the field, and then they slowly pull themselves bottom up from the method towards the abstract. But it's really difficult to do that, really time consuming, and you keep on balancing the two together. It takes experience to be able to write an abstract before you write the rest of the paper. You can't write all of the abstract, but you can write a lot of it. When you do your research planning, it is good practice to try to draft an abstract. Look at the abstract frame, answer those questions. If you can answer those questions, you're going to have to answer those questions at some point. So answer the questions as best you can, and it will really help focus your work. So some of the questions you can answer. Well, these are things that you can probably make some guesses about. You may not have all of the information, but you may be able to guess at some of these things. Okay? What is the problem? What are you focusing on? How are you planning on doing it? What methodology are you going to use? What's important about it? Why is anybody going to care? What do you think you're going to find? Okay? What do you think your conclusions are? What does it imply? What future work is out there? What's your contribution going to be? There's quite a few things that you can actually make a guess about early, and making that guess will really help you with your planning. And it'll give you a point of conversation with your supervisor, with your manager. For those of you who are going to the work integrated learning space, this is really important to show your manager that you're proactively planning, that you're just not expecting them to provide direction, that you know what the questions are that you can actually address, that you can think about, you can test ideas with them, but you're actually engaging with their context, with their technology, with their capability, and you're starting to tease out the answers to these questions. So this is a really useful frame in planning your work.